Hello and welcome to this third video of the series. Today we will talk about something that is not talked much about, even though it is so important for us. The topic is basically about the city. Imagine you're living in a city with millions of people, most of whom you will never meet, and all of those people want different things. And for example, by lunchtime, most of them are fed, dressed, and are just moving around. Now, the weird part of that is actually when no one ever thinks about, nobody is in charge of that. There's no office that decided how much bread your city needs today, no committee that made sure that the shelves are full. It just happened somehow. Every single day actually. And we walk right past it because it's so normal to us. We never think about it. So how is this actually achieved? Well, today we will look at a handful of ways society can pull this actually off. But today we will also look at the order we have at the moment and why we ended up with that one. So why is this even hard? Well, do you remember from the last video that there are millions of us and all want different things, each knowing only a tiny bit of silver what's going on, and no one is really that reliable of us. Getting all of that fit together without constant fighting, without one giant boss basically barking orders at everyone, that's the actual problem we are facing. And every society has to solve that. So there are basically four answers. Let's go through them. So the first order is the order might makes right force. It is kind of the worst order that can be achieved. Whoever is strongest grabs what they want. Everybody else just loses. Then the next fight starts about the next thing. Well, actually, you can't really call it order because it is kind of the absence of order. It is what you see when law breaks down and there's no order through law anymore. There are warlords, gang fights, gang wars, and you typically see that in a country that has fallen apart or never really has been a country in the first place. So, what fixes that problem? Well, the answer actually comes from a philosopher, and that's Hobbes, basically. His idea was very, very simple. Hand one giant power, in our terms, it is always the state, the monopoly of force. So the private fighting basically becomes pointless because the state always has more force than any private enterprise. Is this a bad idea? No, absolutely not. It is a needed one. Because if that would be not the case, there would be absolute chaos and no order in place. However, there's also a catch about that, and this basically hunts every state. The power strong enough to stop everyone else fighting is also strong enough to do to you whatever it wants to, because it is the ultimate power. So that is quite a problem, isn't it? So we have to say peace enforced by a boss who answers to no one is basically just peace in a prison. Because if the boss wants to crush you, he will just crush you. And this is actually a problem humans actually face already a long time and are working on. How do you get protection without having a master? Remember that we will talk later about that. So we come to the second form, and that's in hierarchy. It's basically the second way. Someone at the top assigns everyone a slot. For example, a king, a noble class, a priesthood, a caste. Your job is your position, and these are basically all options you've got. You cannot rise, you cannot fall. Well, you could fall in some cases, obviously historically seen, and you could rise in some cases, but it's relatively rarely. And mostly what you are is decided actually by who your father was. So there's relative security in that system. So we should be fair to that system. It was normal for most people in most of human history, and it wasn't all that bad. It was quite stable, and sometimes we had great civilizations through it, and also great inventions. but it was nothing compared to what we have now. It's kind of if you're starting at a certain field in a game and you will also end on that field, you will just stay on it because the king has all power and he could protect you, doesn't have to protect you. If he protects you, you stay as you are and nothing really changes throughout your life. It's a stable life. If you like that, and that system is for you. Well, then let us come to the third way, and that is the planning way, the central command. And it's quite a tempting one, to be honest. The idea basically is keep the neatness of the hierarchy, but capture also the wealth you can get from trade by basically gathering all information in one place and running the economy from the top instead of from the bottom. And there's just one master plan who decides what happens, when, by whom. It sounds pretty smart on paper, to be honest. Basically, the best of the country sitting somewhere and deciding how what should work. And well, there are some flaws with that, obviously. The biggest example we have, obviously, is the Soviet Union in the 20th century. And well, it kind of failed at some point. But it didn't fail because the people were stupid, the planners were stupid. They were actually quite good people, quite smart in many cases, because obviously they tried to put the best people they have in that place. So it was not really that it failed because of the people. It's quite similar actually to Platon's philosopher kings, would have also failed probably, even with the best people in power. Why did the Soviet Union fail though? Well, there are many reasons for it, but my favorite reason, I think it is one of the main reasons, is it failed because to run the plan, they had to switch off everything that let an economy find out what people actually wanted. Real prices, profit and loss, the freedom to start something new, and to risk of failing. Everything was planned. And like this, you couldn't find out what people want and which were fair prices for something. What would people pay for something instead of another good? So what was the result of all of that? Basically, you had shortages on quite some stuff people were desperate for. So some people were basically trying to get something they couldn't get, and other people had warehouses full of stuff no one wanted because it was according to the plan. The plan didn't know what the people in the end actually needed and wanted because, for example, a special situation occurred and the plan obviously couldn't handle the situation because it wasn't plannable. So it's not a mistake by the planner, but it's quite a mistake by the system actually. So one big plan sounds quite wise, but turns you blind. I will talk about this in future videos more precisely. But let's come to the fourth way, and that is basically freedom under rules. It is quite a way I defend actually. So nobody commands the whole thing. Instead, people and businesses make their own plans, basically, change them and fit them to each other as it works the best for them, as long as they can make a profit and basically achieve progress in their ends. However, they all have to be inside a framework of rules, rights, prices, contracts, and courts can always change the plans of the businesses and the people. When we look back, for example, at the example of the city running with no one in charge, no one is in charge of the business at the moment, or for example, of feeding the people, there's just a set of rules everyone plays inside and prices that basically quietly tell the people where they are needed and change the plans. So out of my opinion, it's the only one of the four that puts everybody's scattered knowledge to work and still makes people face the consequences when they are wrong, when they are failing. And this is important because they have to learn out of mistakes. And still it treats everyone as grown up instead of pieces of a game. Yes, it is messy. Yes, it is noisy, and nobody designed it. So there's no real order by a central government of it. But it outfeeds, it outclothes, and outhouses every tidy alternative we have tried, and this is proven historically. Now, obviously, as for every system, there's also bad about that, but the good outplays the bad, at least for the moment, until we found a better alternative, if there is any. And maybe in the end, you will see, oh, that was actually quite bad to what we will have in 200 years. Who knows? But for now, I think this is the best way of handling it. Now, obviously, execution matters a lot. We see states that are horribly failing while having the theory, that framework, but not really working it to the perfect extent, but executing it quite bad. And then you can have catastrophe that is higher than actually, for example, in a central planned economy. So just a quick note for the people who are basically attacking it too fast. Defending freedom under rules is definitely not saying that anything works or markets are magic or greed is good in any way. The whole thing leans on the rules part, actually. I think that's the most important thing. Real rights, honest courts, contracts that actually get enforced. That is very important. If you take away those things of freedom, you don't have freedom anymore, and you are quite um, in the first option again, which is just rule by force, and that would be really bad. And basically, winning by serving customers is not the same thing as winning by rigging the rules in the favor through basically politics, through making lobbying and thus getting an advantage over the competition and being in a situation that is unattackable, having a whole monopoly and basically not serving the people but just reaping profit. So that is really bad, and that has to be a clear distinction here. So in the end, it's not freedom instead of order, it's a particular kind of order, one that still leaves room for to try things, to get things wrong and then adjust. Things, basically a kind of freedom where failure is a part of it. So apart from the historical examples, why did I decide with the fourth part? Well, let's look at it next to each other. Force basically gives you a war or a prison. There will be just killing and a lot of force, and we don't want that. Birth rank gives you kind of a cage you're born into. You're secure, kind of, but you can never grow out of yourself. It is good for people who like to be secure. And when you have just one big plan, well, you're quite confident with that plan, but you're quite blind. So there will problems occur. The problems are worse or better than those in basically freedom under law. That really depends on how both are executed, but generally you're rather on the negative side. Freedom under rules is one that kind of stands out because it's the only one that treats you actually as a person who actually knows something and might be wrong. And this is important. Instead of someone to be commanded, ranked, or programmed by someone else. So you're kind of an independent person who can design your own life in the framework of rules, obviously. And what I like in particular about it is actually that no one designed it. It's just what we kind of stumbled into over centuries of trying out to get better. And this is where we kind of ended up. And we should, there's not really a reason to worship it, but it's important to understand it because things we stumble into, we can stumble out real fast and come back, for example, to the rule of force, the rule of the stronger, or for example, back to a command economy, and there we would have trouble again. So, in case you're interested in how that of the scattered knowledge and in free order actually works, I will make future videos about it and dive deeper into it and also talk in more precision about it because it is important to understand. And I think it's also important to hear my argument, to make a counter argument, and also disagree, which obviously many people will do, and I totally understand this. And I think most people who disagree and are, for example, in favor of a command economy have some points obviously to make that are not really bad, because we see nowadays that our free order has also quite the problems. As I said before, it's often about execution, but there are some problems that occur in every free order anyway, how well it is executed in the end. The market also doesn't work wonders, but it is pretty much the best thing we have got. That's at least what I would say. So I hope you liked the video. I hope you could enjoy it, learn something, and well, write something down in the comments if you have criticism, if you have advice, if you liked it, if you disliked it. But anyway, have a great time and bye for now.